Welcome, everyone, to the Aging and Spirituality podcast. We are so excited to have a very, very special guest today. Her name is Niamh McAnally. Did I say that right?
Excellent. Very good
I,
pronunciation.
She
well,
worked on it.
I
She
was
worked on it.
they sent me a secret way to say it, so I've been practicing. And she's going to be an amazing interview, listeners. So don't go anywhere. We're going to get right into it now. Niamh is an Irish-born best-selling author, a speaker, a former TV director, and the youngest daughter of the late BAFTA award-winning actor Ray McAnally and actor Ronnie Masterson. So she comes from an interesting lineage that you can read all about in her new book, which I'm going to be telling you about. Niamh has also traveled worldwide, and she's worked as a volunteer in many island nations like the Caribbean and the South Pacific. And she now lives in the southwest coast of Florida, and she offers writing workshops, which is really an interesting place to be now in your life. And I'm gonna want to know all about that. She actually brands herself as the writer on the water, which you'll figure out is very on brand for her because she spent a lot of her life on a boat, traveling around the world on the water. So she's an adventurer. Her memoir that is called Following Sunshine was released in September of 24, and I read that for this interview. It was utterly fascinating. And it charts her journey through middle age, from homelessness, actually, to exploring destinations such as Fiji and Bora Bora. And ultimately, which is another really interesting part of Niamh's life, is finding a profound and life-changing love. She and her husband, Captain Gary, still travel the world together. So her book is really serves as a roadmap for us, these listeners of this podcast, because she inspires you to awaken and really find that potential within. And that's a perfect segue for our conversation today, because we really focus in this cast on encouraging people over 60 to find their true path, to fulfill their potential and really live their best life. So this is going to be an interesting combo, everybody. Listen up. Welcome to the show, Niamh. We're very excited to have you. I'm Kathy Lee Taylor.
And Chris Jensen.
Thank you both so much. It's lovely to be invited on your podcast. Thank you.
You're so welcome, and we're so happy to have you. Are you in Florida now?
We are actually, yeah, I'm in
Okay.
Southwest Florida right now. Yes.
Okay, fun. All right. So I'm going to begin with some of the things that really piqued my interest with your book. I noticed that what you discussed in Following Sunshine was some topics that had to do with personal growth. And you mentioned people like Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra. And of course, these are influences in our generation, our times as well. And, being a couple of old yogis, I call us, this is like a fascinating, interesting area for us. In fact, in your book, you quote Liam Neeson quotes your book as saying it's a must read for anyone seeking inspiration and a deeper connection to the world. That really is, like a great description. Although it's all about adventure and all the stuff that you did, it really is that spiritual journey that was really fascinating, at least for me, to read. So I'll start with my first question. Did you pursue your spiritual growth consciously this way, or was it just a natural outgrowth of your adventures? And what would you say are the biggest growth lessons in this lifetime?
Ooh, there's a lot there to unpack, isn't there?
You can do one at a time.
I'll be back next week. No, I would say I started out initially when I was starting traveling at a younger age, when I was in my 20s, and initially my very first overseas, if you like, was to live in Paris, France. And I went to school there after I left school in Ireland as a teenager, predominantly because I had found that at the time Ireland was very much a homogenous society, and it wasn't as diverse as it is today. And one of the lessons we had to learn in English was from a series of essays called The Idea of a University. And in it, the author had said that it was a school of knowledge of every kind with learners and teachers from every quarter. I'm probably paraphrasing, but that gave me the sense that I needed to travel to try and get a little bit more diversity, to try and like embrace other cultures in the world. And so I lived in Paris for a while in an international class from people all over the world. And spool forward about, I think it was the 90s. I ended up became a scuba instructor and I started doing some volunteer projects over in Belize and working on the coral reef projects there.
Right.
And over a period of time, I realized that when you're volunteering, you really understand that concept of you're in service. We're all in service for each other, ultimately.
Yes.
But at the same time, it gave me the opportunity to travel because I was volunteering. I was being housed and fed. So it wasn't like I was, spending a fortune trying to get around these various different places. And about the middle of the 90s, I think it was, I was going through like a down period of my life, if you like. And that's when I first learned about Tony Robbins. And I had listened to his personal power tapes back in the day when we had the cassette, the Walkman, you'd go out for your walk,
Remember?
right? Remember that?
I listened to him on those two.
Yes. And it was funny because I remember one of them, he ended up saying something like, well, maybe I'll meet you someday. He was really good at talking to each individual person. And I took that 30-day program and it really started to open up my eyes an awful lot to there's more to life than just the practicality of life.
Mm.
And years later, I got that opportunity. I met his son in Florida, in Orlando, when they were coming over to do one of his Unleash the Power Within programs.
Mm.
And I thought, you know what? I want to go do that. And that started me on the journey with Tony Robbins. And I learned so much. So as I started to travel, the year, which is the middle part of the book called Around the World, I ended up bringing an awful lot of those practices with me. And that's where I started to, really start to live it and sort of live the spirituality of travel and engaging with other people from around the world. So that
Mm.
part really started to go. So I guess to answer your question in one, it kind of like was a mesh. It started out on, I think the more my mind expanded, the more it delved into the spirituality side of things. Does that make sense?
It
Yeah,
does.
but you were of service most of the time,
Yeah.
all during this whole journey. It
Hmm.
wasn't something that you grew into. It was something that you brought with you, and it was kind of your course in life the whole time. So that's really fascinating, to be honest.
Like in yoga, volunteering, is very, very important. Karma yoga,
Hmm.
serving without a lot of expectation of reward, it definitely expands the mind and the heart, particularly.
Yeah, and that was that
100%.
opportunity that I embraced in Paris when I was actually 18 at the time during that year. And I lived as a jeune fille au pair in one of the families, and I was minding for my pay, if you like, I was minding the children. There was only one initially. And that gave me that sense of living in the community with the people who lived there. And from that moment on, I knew I didn't want to be a tourist. If I was going to go anywhere, I wanted to go and experience life as it is lived among the communities. And I think that's why so much of my travel has been revolved around volunteering while I'm traveling.
No doubt. And I bet if you were to talk to a lot of people that do traveling in the world, that's what they're looking for,
Mm, mhm,
ultimately.
mhm. Yeah,
So you
yeah.
really led a blessed life.
Yeah.
Very blessed, very
Yep.
blessed. Now, that's not to say there isn't anything wrong with if you're actually, I mean, a lot of times when people on cruise ships, they get one day in a town or something like that. If I'm somewhere, like especially in a city, and I literally have 1 or 2 days, I have no problem jumping on one of the hop on, hop off buses to kind of get an overview of a place. You're
Sure.
not gonna have the time because time is really what allows you to get in with the community.
Right. That
Right.
makes sense.
Right. You can't be there for a day or two.
Right,
Or
right.
even a week. You have to immerse yourself. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, you talk about the 5 habits people should develop to make travel an opportunity for personal growth. And one of the things you talked about is being open-minded. And can you expand a little bit on the influences that worldwide that have taught you about that? And, as a follow-up to the open-mindedness, which I think kind of fits with it, is fear. A lot of people
Hmm.
would be very fearful about taking
Hmm.
as you have. And so did you have that, and how did you overcome that as well? So I know
Yeah,
that's questions, but
well, let me start with the fear question first, okay?
okay.
Um, what I learned in all of this experience is that you number one have to listen to your own intuition.
Mhm.
And especially if you look like, oh, I'm a single female and I'm heading out into the world by myself, there's an awful lot of people in your circle may turn around to you and say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You could get robbed, you could get hurt, etc. And if you allow other people's fear to infect you, that doesn't serve you ultimately.
Mm.
And so I have learned that I have to listen to my own gut. Now I've got better at doing it over the years. And there's times where you can hear yourself saying to yourself, this would be a better course of action, or, but I don't really like it. And you have this little conversation going on in your head. And my dad had taught me one expression years and years ago, and it was, once you know something, you can't not know it anymore.
Right. I know it. You
You
can't.
know, and
So
it
affirming.
sounds so simple, but it's quite profound.
Mhm.
Now, I could have my instinct tell me this is a good way to go, and the other part of me saying, no, I really don't want to do that, and I can ignore it, but it's not going to go away. I'll always know it, and so then eventually I kind of go, okay, well, maybe that was the right course of action. So to embrace that, I kind of think that you need to be very mindful of not allowing other people's fears infect you.
Mm.
Okay. And part of I've learned about keeping fear at bay is to stay mindful in the present moment.
Mm.
And I think most of our anxiety comes from the future of what
What
this
if?
could happen, that could happen to me. And if I stay right in this moment in time, I'm sitting here talking to you guys. I don't have 5 minutes down the road. We don't know what's going to happen. I just got out of a huge thunderstorm in Florida. That could have been the last thunderstorm, so we only have now. And in this moment, I'm sitting in a chair. I'm comfortably talking to you. There is nothing to be feared,
Mm.
right? Um, so to bring that forward into the open-mindedness, when I traveled, particularly was time when I was down in Tonga, this has really struck home with me. We are brought up in a certain way, in a certain culture, in a certain style. And yes, we all grow individually differently depending on our circumstances. We've got nurture, we've got nature, we've got both of those combined going on. And we have certain traditions maybe running around in our head as this is how things should be. And one thing traveling has taught me in terms of opening my mind is just because it would be something wrong in our culture doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, because if somebody does it differently.
Mm.
And the example that I bring out in Following Sunshine is we all know that the turtle is generally endangered species, right? But it's actually food in Tonga, or it has been for generations, where the fishermen would catch the turtle and they would eat turtle. And I remember being there with the family that I was volunteering for, and they were an Australian family who were running a swim with the whale business, and they had two teenage children that I was tutoring. Not that I was a teacher, I was just helping them along with their lessons. And there was one day on a Sunday in Tonga, everything stops. It's actually kind of against the law to work on a Sunday. That's their kind of day they set aside, and a lot of it's a big church going community, etc. And one of the local families had caught a turtle for the Sunday umu, which is the big Sunday feast. And the Tris, who's the lady that I was volunteering with, went to go see her and explained to her, well, the turtle is an endangered species. And the lady said to her, I've got to feed my family.
Hmm.
And do you know what I mean? And so then that started me to think, actually, as it turned out in that story, she did give Tris the turtle. We tagged it and sent it off, and it'll show up later on. They'll be able to figure out where the turtle went. But what it started to open my mind to think, hang on a second, let's talk about food sources, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
in the West, we throw the cow on a barbecue and think nothing of it, unless, of course, you're vegetarian or vegan, right? Well, the cow is sacred in other countries, in India, for instance, right? In Ireland, we ride horses. In France, they can eat them, and you'd be going shock horror. And yet, who's to say what's right or wrong? And just to keep that open mind, because we could go in with these preconceived notions that that's absolutely wrong,
Yeah.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah,
It
that
is
is
fascinating.
so true. I did a fair amount of travel in India, and
Mm.
it's just things are so very different. And I remember being in a restaurant where the person I was there with, the local person, he spoke to the server in the native language. And I said, "Oh, what did you say to him?" And he said, "I told him to wash the dishes," because they would take the dishes from one person and just put your food on it without washing it. And since we were from the US, he wanted
Please wash my dishes.
wash the dishes before you put their food on it, you know.
Oh my gosh.
But for them, that's just life, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminded me of a real quick story. There was another volunteer project that I had applied for that I didn't go on. And again, listen to your instincts. And one of the things was they asked me how tall I was. And I was like, what's that got to do with anything? Well, it was apparently the accommodation was in this caravan, and the bed was only so long and the wall was in the place, and if I was too tall I wasn't going to fit in the bed. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a little taller than that. And I said, okay, we'll work around that problem, right? And she said, and we feed, the guests that come in, and it was like a hostel kind of situation, and we feed the guests and whatever, and then you get to eat. What is it? Yeah, we feed you get to eat, but it's not from the guests' leftover plates. And I was like, okay, maybe this, what else is there that is not being said right now? Maybe this one doesn't quite fit. So for instance, that's one where I said, listen, I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to go there. And like I said, not that there's anything wrong with how everybody else does things, but that wasn't going to work with me.
And that's the bottom line. What works for you,
exactly.
You have to figure out along the way. That is the whole spiritual journey, right? I mean, it feels like you've been on that, your whole life, just bringing it with you wherever you go.
Yeah.
And, you've had so many jobs along the way, you talk about them in your book, but now I'm really interested in how you ended up in the place where you're offering writing workshops, and what's that all about for you?
Right. Okay. So yes, I've had 5 different careers across 5 different industries. Like I said, my parents were actors, so I was hospitality, TV director, scuba instructor, hospitality we said, and I did about 10 years as a retirement financial advisor and insurance agent, and now finally I am literally sitting down. This is it, guys. This is my last go around. This is yeah, right. I'm now the writer on the water, and I've always written all throughout my life. And one of the things, and I've traveled, and one of the things people used to say to me was, every time you write back to us and say, this is where I'm at, I feel like I am there, that you have this quality in your writing that puts us right in the scene, right there with you. And I kind of feel I can travel vicariously to these places. And so I've always written like all sorts of things. And when in 2016, when I ended up on the sailboat, which is a whole other story, which is the third part of Following Sunshine, called Around the Heart. When I ended up on the sailboat, I showed one of my short stories to Gary, the captain, and he read it and he goes, Niamh, this is what you should be doing. And believe it or not, I started in the spring of 2016. I started writing Following Sunshine. So that's 8 years from first line to publication. Wow. Now, the other book, Flares Up, came out in the meantime and it got put aside. And then I've ended up rewriting the epilogue, bringing it up to date to the moment that I took the photograph that is now the front cover of Flares Up. So so Falling Sunshine kind of serves as a prequel to it.
Wow, that's interesting.
So in all my writings, and I've been going to different book clubs, and we have book club discussions, etc. I am a firm believer that everybody has a story to tell.
Yeah.
And even if it's the same story, my thought is that each of us are so individual, we have a different filter in how we would view even the exact same story. You could tell somebody the plot points and 2 people could write it totally differently. No, that's good for a writer. I'm missing out my adverbs. So anyway, at that point, people kept saying, well, how did you go about it? And I couldn't write. I'm not a writer. I'm not like a John Grisham or whoever. And I said, I believe I can help you there. And so what I did was I started to create these writers' workshops. And what I do with everybody is the first thing I do is ask them 3 questions that they have to answer. Number 1, what do you want to write? Number 2, whom do you want to have what do you want to write? Why do you want to write it? And number 3, whom do you want to have read it? And the purpose behind those 3 questions is, what do you want to write? Some writers are told, write what you know, etc. You don't have to necessarily write what you know. This day and age, you can research. The second is the most crucial part is why do you want to write that story?
That's your why.
And do you know what I mean? That's the why, because the only thing that will keep you going in the middle of a book when you're still stuck at the desk 8 hours a day for, how many
It is the
months and months
why.
and months
Yeah.
is the why. Because
Right.
if you're,
That's a
if,
question. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. If you're not sure on your why, you're going to get bored.
Right.
And if you're getting bored, my goodness, the reader's going to be even more bored than you are, right? And that'll keep you going. And then the other question is whom do you want to have read it? And the reason behind that question is it something that is just your legacy you want to pass on through the generations of your family, for your grandkids, a little bit of your history or where you came from or what your life lessons, etc. That will determine what you can and cannot write, if you like. If you want something that's going for a broader audience, that will dictate what you do and do not put into a book. Especially if it's a memoir, because you're basically laying your entire story bare. And if it's not like, oh, look at me, here's me, if it's really designed, which I'm hoping Following Sunshine is designed to share experiences that might be relatable to other people's and what they're going through. That was my purpose anyway, behind Following Sunshine. So
Well,
I'll give, yeah.
but the people that are listening, and I hear this often in the boomer generation, is that they would love to write a memoir, but they haven't necessarily lived really exciting lives like you. But what I hear you saying is that your story is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Telling
Mm-hmm.
your story is enough, and that going through the process of learning how to write that is incredibly fulfilling, and it passes down really necessary information from one, you know, person to another, from one family to another.
Yeah, and an interesting thing for people to understand, there's a big difference from an autobiography to a memoir. So the autobiography was much more the thing back in the day, but it's like it starts off with I was born, I did this, I did that, and then I died. But the memoir is a snippet in time, right? It's not, so it could be like a 1 year thing you did. It could be 5 years. It could be 1 month. I have one, it's a short memoir in another book called A Page from My Life. And during COVID, there was an Irish radio station that said, okay, everybody's stuck indoors. Can you write a 500-word memoir, which is a page from your life? And I wrote a 500-word piece. It was an essay competition. I wrote a 500-word piece about what happened to us on the sailboat during COVID when we were stuck down in Antigua. And thankfully, it was chosen as one of the stories in the book. But that spanned a period of, I want to say 72 hours, maybe, but that's a memoir. Do you see what I
Wow.
mean? So you
Yeah,
don't, so the idea that, oh, I haven't had an interesting enough life to write a memoir is not the case.
yes. Everybody's had something interesting enough to talk about.
Well,
Exactly.
everybody's had some personal growth, some
Yeah.
experience that others will value from.
Yeah.
In our yoga classes that we taught, when someone asked a question, it was really important because 3/4 of the people in the room have had that same question in their mind, or something similar, it helps them. And it's the same thing, I think, here, someone's personal experience. I'll read something and I'll think, wow, I hadn't thought about that, but, yeah. I have the
Yeah.
same feeling.
Yeah, that's always been my goal behind the books. I akin it to yes, it's my story, but the book is not about me per se. It's like I'm using my story as the framework in order to share the different experiences and what if there's situations I was in and here's how I overcame it. And if that's helpful or relatable to somebody else, that's the purpose in my writing that book. So that answers the why for me.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to people, who are over 60? And how do they gain clarity? I mean, maybe, they've had a lot of responsibilities all their life, and now they're they're thinking, well, what do I really want to do? And they don't know.
Well, do you know what the funny thing is? And this, I think I learned this from Tony Robbins. I'm pretty sure I did, where you say, well, what do you want? Or what do you want to do? And the answer comes out straight away. First of all, is I don't know. And I learned from him to say, the next question is, well, if you did know, what would it be? And you would be surprised. There was a waiter in Ireland. We were sitting around the restaurant one day. She was absolutely superb. I was watching her because, I've been in hospitality, so I was watching her work the room with a smile. She was very, very busy. And the night quietened down and I came over and I said, is this your career, or what do you buy? She goes, no, not really, but I don't know what I want to do. And I said, well, if you did know, what would it? She goes, fashion designer. And it came out of her mouth so fast, you know?
Yeah.
And so to help people, one of the questions, another version I put, I say, like, if you talk about not meditation per se, but say, imagine you're in bed and it's coming up to morning time. All your bills are met, all the food is sorted out for the day, your family are all taken care of. There is no demands on your life, and you're living in such luxury that you have an attendant who comes into the room and actually draws the curtains for you. And the first thing they do is they turn around and they say, it's a beautiful day. What would you like to do today?
Hmm.
And the first thing that comes out of your mouth is usually what you're passionate about.
Oh my God, I gotta
And
try that.
what? Say that?
I gotta try that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. That's
And
awesome.
and you don't, it's like you understand instantly in that moment what comes out. And you have to set the scene. Now that I've said it, people will, if somebody else tries it on you, oh yeah, I see this one coming. But it's like one of those ones you present if somebody's never been in that situation.
Right, exactly.
The other one I use, and people laugh at me until they really get it, is on major decisions, I have flipped a coin. Now, including buying a house. Is this the right house or not? But anyway, I have a piece of jewelry, which is two dolphins. I'm very, very fond of dolphins. It's my thing in the water. And there was this gorgeous piece of jewelry, a necklace with two dolphins. I went in, and of course, the jewelry assistant was saying, "Oh, it's so beautiful, and you should buy it." Da, 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 da. And I said, "Well, no, let me think about that for a moment." And at the time, it was like a month's rent or something. It was like a lot of money. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to flip a coin." And he's looking at me in absolute horror. And so I flipped the coin, and sure enough, it landed on the wrong side to buy it, right? And I was laughing so much as he goes, best of three, right? But the funniest thing about flipping a coin, when it lands, in that instant that it lands, and if it's heads or tails, you instantly go either, yeah, or oh.
Oh, right.
Even though you think you don't know which one you want. And it's never right. I mean, I don't rely on it to actually, make the purchase or commit to something, but it tells me what I really know, what I really want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an interesting exercise, because I think about when I coach people and you get them to that point where they spit out they spit out exactly what they want, right? And they can't take it back. And
Yeah.
you hit the right thing, because they start backpedaling like crazy.
Right.
Trying to figure out why they can't have it, or they can't do that particular thing, like, just take that with you and think about it, it's like.
Exactly. And that goes back to that other phrase from my dad, which is, once you know something, you can't not know it anymore. So that person is walking away with knowing what they really, really want. And then it's up to them whether they act on that or not. But they can't not know it anymore.
But they are definitely uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, all growth comes through change, and all change is uncomfortable, right?
Right.
And that, as a coach, that your job is to try to have them hold on to it. It's okay. It'll change. Okay. So this actually segues me into a really interesting part of what I talk to boomers about a lot. And that is, oftentimes they get into that retirement phase, right? That retirement age, and sometimes they really are looking to do something meaningful. Their purpose feels like they want to contribute to others, and maybe say, volunteer like you did in different countries, and that kind of thing. So do you have any recommendations about how to do that in a way that maybe if they can't afford to do it, they can do it the way you did in exchange for food and lodging? I mean, I know there's sites like Workaway and stuff like that help you do that, but if you could just give a summary of your experience of how they could make that happen for themselves.
Okay, well, there's three ways I have done it. One is the major one that I did for the year I was traveling was through workaway.info, which is where you volunteer 5 hours a day, 5 days a week in exchange for food and lodging. And what you really need there financially is the airfare if it's far away to get there. That's it, right? And a bit of spending money for your day off or your time off. The other way, and this is when we were living on the boat and we would have to haul it out if we were in an area of storms or, for hurricane season or something like that, when we had no home, nowhere to go, we ended up house sitting and pet sitting. And there's some great websites that will introduce you to homes that usually have pets. There's very few house sitting jobs that don't have pets because, they just prefer to not have somebody in their house and close the door and go on their holidays.
Yeah.
So we did an awful lot of that. We traveled through Europe doing a lot of that, minding cats and dogs and stuff and watering plants, etc.
What's the name of that site?
The one we used is called trustedhousesitters.com.
Okay.
And but yes, I still have an account there. And certainly if it's something that you want your listeners to log on to, I can certainly send you a link to it where I think they get a 20% discount if they want to go on, if they want to join as a member. And I guess I get an extra month or two, on my.
That would be great. We'll be happy to put that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the thing about it is, the beauty of it is you can go on there and you can look around. You don't have to join the membership right away, but you can actually look at what's out there.
Okay.
In terms of things, like we did 3 weeks in Stockholm minding 2 cats. We did 6 weeks in Maui, and we did another couple of weeks in Spain. So it was all over wherever we wanted to go. It was amazing.
I would love to try that.
Yeah, and again, you've got to trust your instincts and check it out. And it's the old real estate story. Oh, partial sea view. Well, that's if you're in the attic and you're standing on top of a chair and you're looking at the window, and like this, to me, there's like when people say, oh, it's a cozy house, and I think, okay, it's small. So there's like a code, and I've noticed even with pet sitting, there's kind of a code. If the dog really likes a lot of cuddles and likes you to be around a lot, the dog has separation anxiety for sure. You know what I mean? So you gotta be on your game for some of those kind of things,
Yes, absolutely.
Get to look through that. So that's the second way that I have done it. And the third way I'm only able to do now, because before we had the boat, we didn't have a house, is the house swapping. So I'll go to your place, you'll come to mine.
Oh, okay.
But that was the traditional one where you literally swapped houses. But there's another website that and part of the family that I'm with. It's called People Like Us. And again, I'll send you all the links for all of this if you want to share it with your listeners.
Yeah, enjoy that.
Yeah. And what I really like about this one is it has a Facebook group page. So people who are involved and say, hey, guess what? I'm having a last minute trip. Does anyone want to come visit me? The beauty of the way they've set it up is that you can, like, for instance, we were gone on we're guest speakers on cruise ships. So we were down on a cruise in April, and there was this family from France wanted to come and stay in our house at the time. And I said, great, but I know of my schedule next year, we're not going to be able to get to France. So I won't be able to go stay with you. And this particular company, they have a currency called a globe, and they had a globe to give us. So now the next time I need to go somewhere, I can look up, oh, okay, I want to go to Portugal, and my house won't be free at the time. Well, I'm going to give them a globe so I get to stay there. So you can either do reciprocal, which is same time. You can do non-reciprocal, where yes, I'll go to your house at some other date, or you can do non-simultaneous, and then non-reciprocal. I'll never go to your house, but you'll give me the currency to be able to go somewhere else.
Oh, interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's a very nice situation. Yeah.
Yeah. So all 3 of those elements, I mean, the first one, you're working hard 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. The second one, you're not working that hard, but you're just minding the pets, which can be a little bit limiting if you're trying to go, really look around a place. You got to get home to walk the dog, or let the cat out, etc. But then the third one, where you house swap, that's, you're not doing any work at all. All you do is got to get there.
That is so cool. That's really helpful information.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So you have such a great history of adventure. Can you share how these experiences have opened you up for more reflection and personal development?
Well, part of what I do in the morning time, I'm very blessed now that we have a little house on the water here in Charlotte Harbor. So we've got a dock where we've got a small boat now, and I'll go down and I'll sit down there, and we have our breakfast meetings. Myself, my husband will have breakfast, but then we'll have literally a breakfast meeting, which could go on for about 2 hours actually. Sometimes, just like we like each other's company and we're talking. And it's that time just to be calm and be quiet. I tend to get up a little earlier than he does, and I take that time in the morning. I'll go on my bike ride, and that will actually really, I'll come back and I'll start writing. One of the things I do is I actually write in my head, which brilliantly avoids the blank page. So I'll be out on a bike ride and I will just let my mind open up, and the sentences will come through me, and I'll just come home and just start typing. So it's carving out the quiet time. And especially now with screens and phones and everything else like that, I've just actually taken up a new game, which I'm not a big game person at all, but there's a Zen word game thing, and it has a lovely, meditative kind of music while you're creating words out of letters and stuff like that. So that kind of, I find that really soothing. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, me
Um,
too.
but generally now what we try and do is say, okay, no phones at the dinner table. I'm trying to institute where we will have at least one day where we're okay, we'll check them in the morning and we'll check them in the evenings. But at the moment we're literally 24/7 in terms of my business with the new book coming out. So it's been a bit difficult to pull that off. But that's what I try to do, is try and get out in nature. I mean, that to me is where it's all at. I mean, I don't think you can say busy in your head if you're out walking in a forest, if you're walking on the beach, if you're up a mountain or underwater. To me, nature is God's gift of open-mindedness and calmness.
No question. And you've gone from being on water, a big part of your life, to being in a house. That's got to be a huge transition.
Oh my goodness. I'll give you a laugh. When we were on the boat, it's 40-foot space, right? And this was my final crewing job, or sorry, volunteer job, where I came to crew for the 1 month, and that ended up like here we are 8 years later. So one of the things we had to learn was how to communicate in a small space and how to move around each other. And the more our bond and friendship grew, it seemed to me the larger the boat became. Now, couple of things we learned was that there was a lot of couples out there who was like, oh, someday I'm going to retire and sail off into the sunset. And we'd meet these people, and there wouldn't be a couple anymore. There'd be only one person on the boat because they were divorced, because they'd never actually lived together, because when you think about it, couples that are either both working outside the house, one of them was working outside the house, how much time in a week do they actually spend together?
Not a
And
lot.
right, not actually a lot, and especially during the middle years, if you like, if you're raising a family and you're trying to pay a mortgage and all that kind of stuff, it's all busy, busy, busy. And then you might have individual hobbies, etc. And we actually sat down one day when somebody asked us how long we've been together, and we said, well, do you mean in land years or in boat years?
It's like human and animal years.
Exactly. And so we totally agree that it was full time, like 1 year on a boat is like definitely 7 years on land. So when this was the weird thing, when we ended up having to come ashore during COVID, we ended up in a house that was a friend of ours. A long story how we got there. And this was a 2,000 square foot house. And we had a difficulty learning how to live in this huge open space. It was very, very odd. And like Gary would turn and said, where did you go? Where did you go? Where are you? And I went, Gary, I'm over here. It's the other side of the wall. There's a door. I can go in and I can close the door, right? And those kind of things. And like there was a machine that washed our dishes. It was like, whoa, what's this like? Much an easier life on land. So while everybody during COVID was trying to work how to live on top of each other, we were trying to figure out how we were going to expand and live in this bigger space. Now, granted, I'll tell you one thing. During COVID, everybody sort of said, oh, well, we're all in the same boat. No, we were all on the same ocean, but we weren't in the same boat at all. There was people during curfews that were living in a city with certainly in countries where they had serious lockdown, and there was like a 2 kilometer walk you could go, a mile from your house. If you lived by the beach, that's lovely. If you lived in the city center, that's not so lovely, and then people that were trying to teach their kids, homeschool their kids and trying to hold down a job, and everybody on top of each other. So I don't believe we were all in the same boat. I believe some of us were in dinghies, some of us were in land, yachts, some of us were in cruise ships, in comparison. But ultimately, we all experienced something similar in, I think a lot of us turned inward,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Had to.
Yes. And I think, I'm sure somebody someday will do a study, but I bet you any money more books were written or, or have come out of COVID, of people sitting down saying, I've always wanted to write that book. Now is the time. I've got the time to sit down and write. I think a lot of people did that at the same time, or really started to go inward.
Yeah. And look at not just themselves, but how it related to the rest of the world and what was introspective, what's going on in the whole world. A lot of that was going on. And
the fact that people are, were working at home and they didn't want to go back into offices. And they had never thought about that before, most people, but now they realized that there was a better lifestyle.
Yes.
That's part of how it's changed the world.
Yeah,
completely. And I think that, the people started moving out of cities into the countryside, and especially so many jobs could be done remotely. And that has changed the flow, if you like, of moving around. And to the point you made earlier about how it affected everybody, the butterfly effect, that we talk about, that was a huge example of it, where my action here can have an impact on that person's actions over there and further around the world, is like a domino effect,
Right.
And I think that brings back to us how much we are in a circle of service for each other.
Yes. And it's really changed our younger generation. I see it in my kid's age. He's in his 30s, and it's changed the world for them.
Yeah.
We still have a while to recognize it all, but yes, it's made immense changes. So that brings me to one of the most fascinating things about your life is that I know there were periods you talk about earlier in the book where you were thinking about being a mother, and whether that was going to happen to you or not. And of course, we all go through that. And then when it didn't happen and you met your husband to be, it wasn't like, I don't think you were really like looking for it. It just kind of happened, right? It was like part of your life that just kind of took over. This is time, for you to have this relationship and grow in this way. And so just talk a little bit about, it's kind of the culmination of your whole life adventure was meeting Captain Gary and marrying Captain Gary. And that was like in your 50s, right? Was it?
Yes. Back into the 50s. Yeah, for sure.
Because
we actually got married. Yeah.
And I'm in my 60s and I've never had that. So I look at you and go, wow, how did it happen? And what was that all about?
Right. It's interesting for me is that, yes, I had that period of time in my 30s. We're kind of driven by that baby clock going on in your head all the time, right? And so when you're in your 30s, it's kind of like, oh, gotta hurry up. And if you meet somebody that looks halfway like this is going to work, it's kind of you're into a relationship thinking, okay, and just, in my case, you stay too long because you think, oh, well, I don't have time to go look for somebody different. You know what I mean? If this one's not working out, right? Is that, and to be honest, and there came a point, like you said, in my life where I realized, oh, this is not going to happen for me. I am not going to have children. And while I boohooed for a minute, I then had to say, I got to reset my thinking. And the only way I was able to do it was to say, okay, focus on the opposite. Instead of saying, why do I not have the opportunity to have children? What is it that I can do that women with child rearing responsibilities cannot do? And that's where it was. I embraced the long-term travel because, if you're raising a child, you can't just hop off for 4 months to go, save the whales, etc. So spooling forward, once I got out of that situation, then I needed then to come to terms with who I was and come to a place where I was 100% happy to live by myself.
Yeah.
Right. I had to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once I got to that place, I was like, this is great. Life is good. I'm doing this. I can do all these things. That's not to say you don't get lonely, and especially when you're around a bunch of couples, you don't, it
Yeah.
can be,
Yeah.
and a lot of society kind of parties are all geared around couples or food and drinking and going out and all that kind of stuff. So it can be a little bit of a challenge. And when you're traveling, the daytimes are easy, but at nighttime when you're by yourself and you go into a restaurant, you're trying to go food, that kind of like, so for some reason, the attendant always comes up and goes, shouts, table for one,
Right.
it's like, let's put up a flag.
Or maybe it's just
Come
my
on.
mind to do that.
Yeah, loser, right? So one of the, and I'll finish the point, Gary, in a second. But one of the things I used to do is I used to bring a notebook with me into the things, and I would take a bite, and then I'd make a note, and then I think they thought I was a food critic, so I was like left alone. It was great.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
So-
writing, don't bother me.
Yeah, exactly. So then the time came where I went on the boat, and both my family immediately said, "Are you insane? You're going to go to sea with somebody you've never met. How do you know he's not an axe murderer?" And then I found out later that his friends were saying, "How do you know she's not a modern day pirate about to steal your boat when you're like 12 miles offshore?" And again, back to my original point, don't let somebody else's fears infect you. If you feel it's right, go for it. And I felt it was right. He felt it was right. So off we go.
Awesome.
Now, neither of us were looking for a relationship. In fact, I have a line in the book where it says Gary was allergic to pecans and relationships, and he was not having it. But we had a tough time on one particular passage where we had to work our way through a coral reef system, and I was on the bow using hand signals, and he was on the helm. And over a 90-minute period, we never spoke, but we communicated, and that was just it suddenly went from captain and crew to a team.
Mhm.
And then at night, you've got no cell phone, no internet, no nothing. You've just got each other to talk to. And
Mhm.
so we had some amazingly profound conversations. I had some of the background, like I said, in Tony Robbins and that kind of concept. He had a master's degree in spiritual psychology from
Oh,
the
wow.
University of Santa Monica.
Okay.
So the conversations were deep. That's, you know what I mean? Some amazing
Yes.
conversations.
Yes.
And then this kind of, we were just connected on a very profound level. And then suddenly this kind of spark ignited between us. And then it was kind of like, we just kissed the flame. And all the time from the get-go, he kept saying to me, I'm just out of a long-term marriage. This is, we're out here on the boat, we're having a great time, it's beautiful, but don't get your hopes up. He didn't quite say it like that, but it was kind of he was very clear about when we get the boat back to Florida, that's it. Good luck. I'll see you. And I would absolutely, I'm totally clear with that.
Mhm.
We did bring the boat back to America. He left to go back to California to hang out with his family for a while. The boat was in Georgia, actually. We were in Georgia. And I was heading to Ireland for a family reunion. And he said, "Yeah, you can stay on the boat for the next couple of weeks while you're waiting to go." Grant. And so I was writing and working a little bit on the boat for him. And then I think the first week I was a little bit boohoo about the whole thing, and I was really missing him because I was left in the space where he had been. You know, the way when people split up, the person who goes away has it slightly easier because they're not in the same memory places.
Right.
But anyway, so after about a week of boohoo, I said to myself, "Well, now, okay, that was that. You need to change your attitude. What was great about it? What was the gift? What was the lesson you could do?" So I went into a whole meditative state on that. And within 5-10 minutes of my going through that process and coming to the point of saying, "I'm okay, and I don't know what that was, but I know I'm a better human as a result." And that was an amazing experience. And that person will be important to me throughout my life, no matter how everything goes from here.
Wow.
I'm not kidding you. It's like hairs on the back of your neck. Within 10 minutes, the phone rings and he goes, honest to God.
No
And
way.
yes, the phone rings and he says, he says I make this part up, but I actually believe this is the part true. He goes, "What year did your father die?" And I'm like, "What kind of question is that?" And he was at an alumni breakfast meeting with some of the people who had been on the relationship course part of the spiritual psychology program. And I'm like, "You are so he says, "Oh yeah, there's an actress here who thinks she worked with your dad." And I said, "You are so busted. This is my head." Like, "Oh yeah, I'm Mr. Single. I'm out there and I'm not, into any kind of relationship. But what am I doing? I'm sitting around at breakfast talking about who?" Right. So anyway, so he says to me, "Would you like to travel up the East Coast of, go sailing up the East Coast of America?" And I'm going, yeah, I've got nothing else to do for a couple of weeks. Sure. And so he comes back and I said, well, where are we going? He goes, New Jersey. I said, what's in New Jersey? And he says, Newark. And there's a nonstop flight to Dublin. And he was obviously at that point deciding to come with me. And then we came
Wow.
back on the boat
Oh,
afterwards. Yeah, I know, right? And
wow.
the funny thing is, at first, I went down to the airport to pick him up. And I mean, the guy had left me his boat, his car, and everything. And, I was living the life for about 5 or 6 weeks, just writing and having a great old time. Anyway, so I went down to the Jacksonville airport to pick him up. And I thought, okay, he's sorted himself out. This is going to go. We're going to be together. And I looked in his eyes, and there was something still there that I couldn't quite put my finger on, but it wasn't like, oh, lovey-dovey, here we go.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if any of you guys have listened to any of Abraham Hicks' work that she
A lot.
does. And yeah, okay. So one of her phrases is, I like you pretty much. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
Right? Like your marriage vows shouldn't say I love you from now forever, etc. So anyway, so I just divine inspiration that came out of my mouth. I said, look, Gary, I like you pretty much. Let's just see how this goes.
Mhm.
And the minute I did that, his whole shoulders dropped. There was no pressure. There was
Yeah.
no, we're going to have to do this, this, and this. Right.
Mm.
And as a result, we check in with each other even now every day. And we say, oh, I like you today. No, I've decided I'm going to love you today. And we have this is part of our breakfast
Oh,
meeting, which is why it goes on so long.
that's sweet. That's sweet.
Yeah. And it's made a big difference. And now we were 4 years on the boat, and one of the things that people who live on a boat, they have what's called a boat card. So there's a picture of the boat on the front, and on the back is your information. And there's usually a picture of the couple on the front. And when you meet other boaters that are out there, this is how you communicate, because you'll see their boat like 2 islands up the way. And so they're called boat cards. And Gary had one with the picture of himself on the front and his boat, obviously. And then as the time was going on, he would kind of write my name on the back of it. They'd kind of say, well, who's she, And he'd start writing my name. And anyway, so I was on the boat a year to the day. And he said, I got you something. And he said, you realize this is our boat anniversary, which is what we started out with. And I went, boat anniversary, right? And he hands me a card. And it's the boat card with a picture of the two of us on the front. And I went around all my sea sisters around the anchors that day with them. I'm on the boat card. I'm on the boat card. And they went, oh, that's like you might as well be married at sea. That's like huge, right?
Yeah,
Talk about commitment, right? And that was after 1 year. And then after 3 more years, so it was 4 years in, on Thanksgiving, on the deck of the boat, as the sun was going down, he brings out this ring, and it's 2 diamonds inside a row of sapphires. So he said, that reminds me of us. It's 2 diamonds in the middle of a sapphire sea.
Wow.
And that was it. Yeah, it was amazing. Amazing.
Beautiful. What a great story.
Oh yeah, he's
Awesome
such a
story.
romantic. He's such a romantic. And then we ended up we tried to organize a wedding in Ireland it was 2020, and we tried to organize a big wedding in Ireland. His family come over, my family would be there, and then of course COVID hit. We ended up doing the legal ceremony, and we had a toes in the sand wedding with 2 other couples who were our witnesses, other boaters in Antigua. And then the wedding got cancelled for a year, and then it got cancelled the next year. And then finally one of his grandkids said to us, when are we ever going to be bridesmaids? And I had this dress that I had made in Antigua, and it was hanging up in the closet and on the boat for the longest time as well. And I was like, it would look at me and it would say, are you really going to eat that biscuit? Or you know what I mean? Are you going to wear this dress? And so finally what we ended up doing, because his family couldn't quarantine in Ireland and vice versa, we ended up going to Ireland, having a wedding from my family, and then literally hiking up the dress and taking off the suit, jumping on an airplane and flying. And within the next weekend, we had the wedding all over again in America for his family.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we're married 3 times.
That happened a lot. I know my son got married in 2020 in Scotland, and then they came back here and had a reception.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, my daughter did the same thing. She had a wedding in Mexico, and for the people who didn't want to go, they had another wedding. And the whole thing, they didn't just do a reception, they did a whole wedding again here in California for the people who didn't go to Mexico.
Right.
Right.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah. One of the things we were going to ask you about is keeping the spark alive, being in such close quarters. And it sounds like you've already mentioned a few things you did. Is there any other advice you would give to people for communications, in that situation?
Oh my. One thing we learned, just because we both speak English doesn't mean we both speak the same language.
That's a great way to say it.
Yep.
True.
And growing up in Ireland, I don't know if it's still the same, but we used to have a very roundabout way of talking. And we wouldn't come out as directly as I would say when I first got to America, people would be quite direct. And it's just a cultural difference, right? And I remember there was one very early on, it was within the first year, we were going into a dock and we weren't the greatest at docking at that point. It's like a skill, a skill set you learn over the time. And even then it can still go wrong. Anyway, so I said to him, he said, we should go in and get some fuel. And I went, do we really need to get fuel? Because I was looking at the weather, the wind was blowing, there was a catamaran on the dock. It looked like a very tight space. And, I knew we had enough fuel for the next couple of islands and everything. He says, well, we should never pass up a fuel station because you never know. And anyway, so we go in and it was less than ideal. Let's put it that way. So we bump in and then we told the dock hand and said, okay, you're going to need to walk the boat, like hold on to the boat as we walk it backwards on the dock and then throw me the lines. And he didn't. And then the wind caught the boat and it started coming up this in a marina, like up against all these boats. And it was the fairway, it's called, was only wide enough for the length of our boat. And I was on the deck trying to fend off the backs of other boats. He was at the stern. The dinghy was starting to crash into the boat. It was just a nightmare. And but believe it or not, the actual island was called Man of War Key, which was where we had our biggest row. Anyway, we finally got out of that situation. I was so mad at the time, and in my best Irish temper, I stormed off. And I got as far as the bow. And I thought, now what am I going to do?
Those women,
they're going anywhere.
They're not on land. You can't jump in your car and go work it off at the gym. You can't go to the movies or call your girlfriend. No, you've got to do something. I got as far as the bow. So I had to turn around and walk back. I went down below and we found a way to do. First of all, he said, I said, I told you we shouldn't have gone in there. And he says, no, you didn't. You asked me if we really needed fuel. And that's when we realized we both speak two different languages. And we had to work a whole bunch of processes out where he would be more inclusive of what my concerns would be, and I was going to be more direct. That was what we came to, and we ended up with this concept of the first fix. We got it to where everybody's calmed down, and I like you pretty much, and let's see how the rest of the day kind of goes. But we wait until such time as all emotional charge has dissipated.
Yeah.
So you don't have any attachment to the right, the wrong, the whatever of it. Okay. And then the next time we get to that place, if we're both ready, we will sit down and say, well, listen, this is what I heard. This is how it landed on me. And some of that might be real in this situation. Some of it might be a trigger from my past that has nothing to do with you. And we learned to try and focus on what the actual route of the moment was about, leave all the baggage behind, and also alert the other person to what are those triggers that I don't know about you, especially when you're meeting later in life, because you've got a whole range of relationship things that have gone on in your life, right? Even from childhood, etc. So we came to that place, and what we learned was when we did that version of that row never came up again. If we didn't address it, oh yes, it showed up again in another form.
Right.
And one of the things in terms of those small quarters is we learned to respect each other when we needed space. Now, there was one couple we met on a catamaran, which is a bigger boat. It's like two like monohull boats stuck together, if you like. And what he would do is he would go off into a corner and he would wear a baseball hat. And that was him like going into a room and closing the door. Right. And that was the signal, leave me alone. I need some space. I need to decompress, But we got to learn to read each other's faces really, really well. And in an instant, he could tell if something was off with me and vice versa, it was quite extraordinary. And one of the things, like I said, I remember my mother, God rest her, she's gone now, but she came to visit me one time when I was living in America, and she was in the back seat of the car, and we're driving along, and she looks out the window, she goes, "Is that Walmart?" And I went, "It is, ma'am. Do you want to stop?" Because I got more American at that point. And she goes, "No, no, 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 no." And then we drive about 5 miles down the road. "Is that where they have those really soft slippers?" And I went, "I think it is. Will we go back?" And she goes, "No, no, 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 it's grand, it's grand."
You wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then the day we're leaving to drop her to the airport, she goes, "Would we be passing a Walmart on the way?"
That is so cute.
And so that's why I used to say we kind of talk around it. What she really wanted to do was go in there. And what I should have just done was driven in there and parked and said, "Well, I need to go in and get something."
Yeah.
You know?
Let's look at the slippers.
Right. And that's why Gary and I had a difficult time figuring out. And he used to say, "Oh, you're speaking in Irish," even though I speak a little bit of Gaelic. It's not the same. You know what I mean? Even though I'm in English, he says it sounds like you're talking Irish now, you know? So
Yeah.
those were interesting communication skills to learn and
Yeah.
try to stay focused in what this incident that is actually about. Please don't drag it up, because we always say, like, you know, you can be loading the dishwasher and all of a sudden it'll be like, "Oh, that's in the wrong place. That's, well, you never liked my mother anyway." You know, like, where did that come from? Right. And it's like a piece of baggage that didn't get sorted out ages ago.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Always.
And I think, like it's like had different cultures, but we all have different cultures from the way
Mhm.
we grew up, even if we lived in the same town,
Yeah.
it's important, because we think we've said something, but we really haven't.
And different traditions, different
communication-
families have different traditions. Yeah.
And communication is really what the other person heard, not
Right.
really what you said,
Right.
So,
Right.
It's so interesting where you started from in your 50s, like so many people have to do so much work to get
There.
into a relationship,
Mhm.
at all in that age, but then to start there and have all that baggage that you haven't necessarily dealt with. It strikes me that maybe some of your acting background was helpful for you in terms of knowing how to let go easier, like how to be in more of a surrender open space. I don't know why I feel that, but I hear that when you're talking.
Yes.
It's
And
interesting.
it's because both my parents were freelance actors. So from a very young age, I knew that change was inevitable. They would, they'd be cast in a short, a couple of weeks show. So,
Yeah.
and also that's what also helped me reinvent myself in 5 different careers, because it's like, okay, this door is closing, or I'm closing this door because I want to open a different one. And you can start from scratch. I can start from scratch tomorrow if I wanted to, right? Oh, speaking of, said Gary, my bad. I didn't put the ringer off. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, yeah, he's out and about, so he's obviously going to tell me he's coming home. So yeah, so where was I? See, that shows you're over 60. I've lost my train of thought now.
You were talking about going with the flow
Right.
from
Right.
being an actor, learning how to really accept what's going on in life and just flow with it.
Well, with
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I tried to adapt was, wherever I place my head tonight, that's my home.
Yeah.
And that helped me stay present, stay in the moment. And I tend to kind of, even if it's only a hotel room for one night, it's like I kind of try and nest, do you know, and say, "Oh, this is where I am
But
today."
you actually mean not just where you physically are, but where you are in life. This is where I am in the moment. This is my moment, which is a really beautiful expression of being on a spiritual path. So we love that. And we could talk to you forever, but we've gone on for an hour, so we're gonna let you go. But is there anything else that you wanted to add, Chris?
No, this has been just
Okay.
tremendously
Such a
insightful.
full conversation. Really
Yeah, and I
beautiful.
think our listeners are going to get so much out of it. And please
So
do
much.
send links to all of those things, because I
I
think
will, of course. Yeah, I'll get all those over to you. I'm actually doing a pre-launch for Following Sunshine tomorrow, so it'll be a day or two, and I get that over to you. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So can we want to put, promote your workshop or whatever, so give that to us so we can put that in our
we'll put
links
it
for
in.
people that want to attend. I'm sure they would be interested in working with you. So just, the thing that I want to sum up with is that I just have this feeling that, just learn to love each other in every way, every day. That's kind of what your whole life speaks to me.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. So thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking so freely and beautifully with us. It's really been a fun conversation.
Very uplifting conversation.
Bye,
Lovely.
listeners. See you next week.
Thank you both.
Take care.
Bye.